Hi, it's Dawn from Dawn's Dirt. Welcome to another episode where we talk about food and gardening and agriculture and politics and religion and anything else that could be considered dirt. So I'm very excited about today's episode. I actually have a woman here named Sarah. I have known Sarah for many, many years. Sarah was actually a former employee of mine on my farm. And so we worked together on the farm for many years. Sarah was a horticulture student back when she worked with us on the farm. And so excited to have her. Sarah is also a farmer herself, a woman, raw farmer. And so a mother. And Sarah, if you could just give us a little introduction to yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Sarah, and Dawn's right. I started out my horticultural career working for Shirley's greenhouse as my first and only off-farm job.
Really?
Oh yeah. So it wasn't really the traditional hand over the resume. It was I got Dawn's phone number from our cattle buyer.
Really?
And he said, "Oh, you need a job in a greenhouse? I know these people." So I'll give him a call. Okay, well, because we needed work experience between first and second year. I called Dawn and I said, "Hi, this is who I am. Did you need me to come work for you?" And she said, "Sure." So I never had to actually use a resume in my life.
That's very cool. So that's insane. I did not realize that I was your one and only off-farm job that you've ever had. Yeah, that was really cool.
But it was really formative though, right? Because you learn that it's important to work off farm every once in a while, because you learn what it's like to work for somebody other than family. Like when you spend your entire life working for family, it's a different dynamic than if you're working for somebody who becomes family but doesn't start off that way. So you
love it.
Like the amount that I learned at the greenhouse was substantial, because once I quit my job there, then I came home. I started my own greenhouse and market garden. I ran a community-supported agriculture venture for around 8 years. And then I decided that it was time to go farming. The only reason that I had done that community-supported agriculture was that I wanted to learn how to farm on a smaller scale, like learn how to run a business, what it takes to plant a crop, harvest a crop, sell a crop, albeit very differently than what the crops that we grow on the farm, on the big farm. And I felt that I had succeeded in that, and that I got married, and I can't really do all of the things that I need to do right now. So we'll just go learn how to do the big farm now. So yeah, I've been full-time farming on the family farm now for 6 or 7 years, I think.
Wow, I love it. So just for our listeners, if they've never heard of what community-supported agriculture is, could you explain to us what that is?
I could, yeah. So there's a lot of different models for community-supported agriculture. Mine was, I had, how many customers at the most? I think I had most 20 customers or so. So they would sign up at the beginning of the year, and every week I would deliver them a basket, essentially, of vegetables to their door. And I would do that from July until the end of September. And then I would switch to a fall basket. So they would get all the root crops. So potatoes, carrots, beets, and some greenhouse vegetables if the weather was still good.
Right.
And I did my model a little differently, because I had them pay me at the end of each month instead of payment up front. Because of how much hail we get, I didn't feel right taking people's money and then getting hailed out, and then them not getting the full 12 to 14 weeks. Because there was one year we got hailed out. So
yeah. Wow. Well, and that's farming, right? Is getting hailed out. And so in traditional community supported agriculture, people are paying up front because they're partnering with the farmer, so that in typical CSA, you would keep their money if they got hailed out. That's typical, but you just did it a little different because you took the risk on as a farmer and as a first-hand producer. Yeah, I kind of always did the same thing on my farm. I did a little bit of CSA, but not a lot. I mostly did the farmers markets. So, okay, so you graduated high school, went to your college, took your horticulture program, worked for me for a couple years. It was a couple of seasons, I think 2 or 3. I can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it was 3.
Okay. Yeah.
2 years during college and then 1 year after. So it was 3 years.
Yeah, and then you went on to your own ventures. Tell us about you built your greenhouse. You built a little greenhouse, and you did how many acres of garden did you do for your CSA?
The most I did was I think it was about 1.5 acres.
Okay.
And when I look at it now, I go, I understand why I had a tough time getting the weeds under control, because that's a lot to do with by yourself.
Yeah.
There was a couple days when I was dating my husband. I was like, hey, I'll go on a date with you, but you have to come help me weed the beets first.
So he obviously passed the test and got to marry you because, he helped you on the farm. I love that. Okay, so you did that. You did your CS. So, and I'm sure that you were still helping on your family farm at that point too. The work never stops on a family farm. And so then you transitioned from that to your family farm. And can you tell us a little bit about your family farm?
Yes. So at the time, like you said, when I was working for you, there was that week in August when I went, I know I'll be here for work, but I will be going home in the afternoon because we have to go haul silage. So I would start work at the greenhouse at 7:30. I would leave the greenhouse at 12 and be in the truck hauling silage at 1. And then we would go until 8. And we would do that for 4 or 5 days until the pit was full. And then it would kind of calm down. And then we go into harvest. But then I was generally back in school by then. So that was very similar when I had the CSA. Only it was a little different because I'd have to work around my Thursday delivery days. So I would have to work flat out in the mornings on Tuesday, Wednesday, get everything picked, packed, and then do my deliveries on Thursday mornings. And then I'd have to do that during silage, and then I'd have to do that during harvest as well. And that was a lot.
Yeah.
So
as a farmer, you don't stop working. Like it doesn't stop. You can't say, oh, I've got this to do, so the silage can wait, or I've got this to do, or the harvest can wait. That's not an option on a farm.
No, when the crop's ready to go, it's ready to go. And that's something that's really difficult to get across to some people, that I can't go to. I've missed a lot of my friends' weddings because they've gotten married in September. I'm like, I just can't go. It really sucks to miss that, but you also can't miss getting your harvest off. So it's kind of one of those things.
For sure. And people don't understand that. Like when you're a farmer, it is your whole sun, moon, and stars. Like there is nothing that comes ahead of that farm almost. Like very, very few things. Like maybe someone I don't know, a car accident. I don't know. Like they're extreme, right? When the farm needs something, the farm needs something. So what type of farm were you and are you now?
So we are classified, and we still are classified, as a mixed farm. So that means that we have beef cattle and we have crops. We did have a feedlot, but we have significantly scaled that back down to 3 head. So now for our family and a few other people, we did some direct marketing because there's a program through the Alberta government called the On-Farm Slaughter Operation License. So that means that you can sell someone a live animal, and so they purchase a live animal, it's butchered, and then they get the meat, and it doesn't have to be inspected. But the problem with that is now it's really hard to find a butcher because there's so many people doing it, and there's such a high demand for people to be able to buy that animal that it's really hard to find somebody to actually do the butchering. Technically, under that license, we could do our own butchering, but none of us have the skills or the time to do that. It's a lot easier to hire somebody to come in and do that.
For sure. So what I'm hearing you saying is if you're in Alberta and you're looking for a great career, get into on-farm butchering.
Yeah, if you think farming's bad, I feel like if you're a mobile butcher, you might get Christmas off and maybe Easter. But guys, they are flat out all the time. They're booking anywhere from 6 months to a year. Like this year kind of didn't work so great because the butcher that we were working with went out of business. So we were left in a lurch of trying to find somebody who can fill in for them at literally last minute, because we had the steers in March and we were aiming for a butchering date at the end of October. And then we're trying to find another guy to get worked in, and it's it's tough because he's super busy.
Yeah.
We're running out of beef. I need food.
You might have to get creative. Yeah, very cool. And so tell me about your beef. So you're doing it on a small scale just for your family. And I know from my experience, like I've done the odd steer here and there. And, you know, in my thought process, the steer that is on the farm, eating the grass, shot, and doesn't even know what hit them, I don't know, that's the way to do it if we at all possibly can. Because if you think of animal husbandry or, you know, caring for an animal, that animal doesn't even know. They live their happy life and then they were not living their life. And we are grateful to be the beneficiary of that. So
we actually we're fairly local on these cattle. We bring in 3 steers from our neighbor who lives just a mile down the road. They kind of their last born calves in the spring are our calves that we get. So they hold them back over the winter for us, and we bring them in March, and we get them going on a self feeder. So they are barley fed. But it's a self feeder. So they eat what they want when they want. And they come in, we slowly work them up on feed because the rumen in a cattle it's very sensitive. So you don't want to overload them or you could kill them. So we work them up on that self feeder, and
I've got a question about that. So they're barley fed. So you are feeding your three steers grain, not grass fed. So can you speak to that?
They're both. They are out on pasture. So when the grass grows, they're out on pasture, so they can eat all the grass they want, and then they come in and they eat whatever barley they want. It's the ration is barley and beet pulp and some supplement. The supplement is your vital minerals and nutrients, and there's some rumensin in there. The rumensin is they call it medication, but it's a polyanic ionophore. I think that's what it's called. It's been a few years since I thought of that word.
Okay, so can you explain that to me?
Oh, can I? It has something to do with the bacteria and how it... Oh man, that's going back a few years. It essentially helps the bacteria in the rumen work better, and it helps reduce the chances of getting coccidiosis. So coccidiosis, I'm pretty sure it's a bacteria that it's in the ground. So if they're licking the ground, they can get it, and it can cause their gut to bleed. So if you see an animal that has blood on their butt, chances are it could be coccidiosis, or it could be a prolapse. You know, there's a lot of things.
A lot of things. So you feed rumensin, which is basically a bacteria. So it's not medication. It's just natural.
Well, I don't know if it's natural. I'm pretty sure it's called a polyanic, something ionophore. It just makes the gut work better. And we fed that to the feedlot cattle as well, just because I shouldn't even say, because I can't even remember exactly how it works, because it's been so many years since I even had to think about it. But
that's okay.
Yeah. So like when we were feeding cattle in the feedlot, the ration really wasn't that different than what we're doing now, other than we added some barley silage to it, and there was calcium and salt. And we added the salt to the diet because it makes them thirsty, and then they go and they drink more, and then they don't get kidney stones.
So I want to talk to you too. Like this was part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you, was because you owned a family-owned feedlot, and feedlots get such a bad rap. And I know you, I've met, and I know how you've dealt with your animals, and you're a feedlot, which is like blasphemy in some realms of society right now. So can you tell me about your feedlot and how you did things and how you did things differently and how you did things the same, and just about feedlots? Can you educate us on feedlot?
I could give it a good old college try. So we were a small feedlot because we're under that 1,100 head. So when I say 1,100 head, that means 1,100 animals. I'll try not to use too much jargon, but I sometimes don't know what jargon is jargon and what isn't. So we had, on a regular year, we'd around 500 head, I guess. That was about all that my brother, my dad, and I could handle. But we'd bring cattle in around this time of year. Generally, like it's always foggy on the first week of November, and that's always when we're bringing cattle in. So when we'd bring cattle in, they're coming in out of a pre-sort sale, either from Olds or Innisfail. Okay. So a pre-sort sale is where everybody's bringing their cattle in from everywhere.
All the different farms.
And the cattle are all sorted by weight. So you've got 500 weight cattle, 600, 700, and I think they go by 50 pounds. So 500, 550, 600, 650. And then you go to your order buyer, who's the fellow that introduced me to you, and say, we would like to buy 500 head of cattle. We would like that over a couple weeks so that we don't have to bring in 500 head all at once and try to process them. So they would come in on Tuesdays and Fridays, no, Mondays and Fridays. And then the next day you're processing cattle. So when we were processing cattle in the last few years, they'd come in and they would get a shot of two vaccines. And those 2 vaccines would cover a whole host of, because they're a multifunction vaccination.
Okay.
So they would cover all sorts of bugs. Don't ask me what they are because I cannot remember.
Okay. So I'm just going to interrupt you here for a second. So that's a trigger for some of my followers potentially is vaccine. And so tell me about that and what, just in general, we don't need to get into the nitty gritties of what they were for, but just in general. And this was pre-COVID, right? So it was just the regular vaccines that, everyone got and all the farms did. So can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so I think they were actually vaccinated for COVID, but that's that's not the same one that went through the population. So I guess the best way of doing an analogy here is, how all the kids get sick in September?
Yeah.
Like they go back to school, everybody comes home sick.
Yeah.
So you're going to take a bunch of animals that are freshly weaned, they're very stressed, and then you're going to run them through an auction mart. They all get sick. So there are ways in the cattle industry that we could do things better. I'm not saying that there's no room for change, because especially when it comes to taking care of calves, there are things that can be done better. There's been the odd time in the feedlot where we brought in cattle purely by chance that ended up being from one person. And they would they'd go into their pen. They were treated the exact same, but they just weren't mixed with 100 different head. And generally speaking, those pens were the healthy pens. There's one pen that I could think of in general where we had 2 animals out of that pen that got sick, and they were weird things, and it's because they were so wild, but they didn't end up with the normal respiratory things. So the reason why we vaccinate is because they've been through an extremely stressful event. They come in and they're sick, and they need those vaccines to try to give them a fighting chance. And if you have ever stood and you have watched a pen of cattle as it's getting dark, and you've seen those calves pacing that pen around and around, coughing, and you know that you have missed cattle, but you also know they have a vaccine and that might be enough to bring them through, that's why we vaccinate. If you didn't vaccinate, your 2 to 5% expected mortality rate of those cattle would be much, much higher, because if you can vaccinate against those bacterial pneumonias, and that's the primary BR. Those are the 2 big ones that come in out of the auction marts. And if you don't vaccinate or you don't treat them when you find them, they'll be dead. And when we treat them, we are treating them with an antibiotic, because if you don't treat the bacterial pneumonia, then it turns into a viral pneumonia and they're dead.
Right.
And when they do die, chances are you'll do a postmortem and you'll be able to see that. When you're in the feedlot, you take pneumonias very seriously, because when you do that cross section of a lung and you can see, the vet will point out, say, well, this is where your bacterial pneumonia was in the lung. Down here, that's where your viral pneumonia was. Your antibiotic worked here, but it doesn't work on the viral. So that's when you can end up in troubles. If you have viral pneumonia going through the feedlot, you still have to treat them to try to get rid of the bacterial pneumonia.
Okay, so let's dismantle a myth right now. So there is a bit of a myth out there that, feedlots are just feeding antibiotics and antibiotics and antibiotics every chance they get. Like, let's just, mix it in their feed and mix it in their vaccine and mix it in everything. So is there truth to that, or talk to me about that?
I'm aware of. So
you didn't do that on your feedlot.
In the time that I was feeding cattle with my dad and brother, we never medicated we didn't put any medicated feed through anything. We did have to add some thiamine just because we were low in thiamine in the silage, and that's just a mineral. It helps improve brain health essentially. But
Right.
we never had to do any medicated stuff, and it's expensive to do that. You're not going to give them antibiotics if they don't need it.
So here's another myth in farming that I think people find. They think that if you're from a city, you think that farmers are just out, and we'll get into spraying and we'll get into crop stuff in a minute here. But so in your feedlot, you're not just giving them medication for the sake of giving them medication and vaccinating them for the sake of vaccinating them. Like that's a calculated move. You don't want to do, it costs money to do that, and every penny counts on a farm. So it's not that you were just, overhead spraying them with, whatever.
No.
Exactly, right? But these are myths that we hear and so that's why I've invited you on, is because I want to talk about just the nitty-gritties of agriculture and learning what do you actually do on a farm your size.
Yeah, if you had a particularly bad year, you might have to mass treat a pen. So that means that if there's 50 head in a pen, they all come through, they all get a shot of antibiotic. But you would do that on a pen by pen basis. And back in the old days, my dad's going to hear that and go, the old days. Back in the days of like Mycotil, that was one antibiotic that was used. You would expect to bring your cattle in, process them, and then treat them with Mycotil or another long-acting antibiotic. And that kind of changed with the advent of Draxxin. So Draxxin is another antibiotic that is really good at kind of giving the calves a boost. So that was another part of their vaccination package when they first came in. So they would get their vaccinations, and then they'd also get a shot of Draxxin, which is an antibiotic. And
Okay.
so that would give you, so they would get an antibiotic off the truck, and then that reduced the chances of them getting sick considerably.
Okay.
So that stopped us having to use the Mycotil. So Mycotil is such a powerful antibiotic. I don't even know if powerful is the right word. I would say dangerous, that if you got a shot of it in you, it could seriously hurt you. So using Draxxin is considerably safer for us, and it worked really good for the cattle. And your mortality rate goes way down. So we're keeping animals alive, but again, there are things that could be done better in the industry, like pre-weaning your calves, preconditioning your calves, and direct selling to feedlots, where the use of antibiotics would be lower. And there's also programs that you can be in that this is pretty important. So there's a Verified Beef program and Verified Beef Program Plus. We were involved in both of those. So Verified Beef Plus was a program designed around making sure that farmers followed protocols around when to give antibiotics, how to give antibiotics, needle placements, which is pretty important because you don't want you're not giving them a shot anywhere. There's a very specific region on the neck of the animal where you're supposed to be giving them their shots. If you lose a needle, you have to document the animal. They have to take their RFID tag, that number down, and that number and that needle loss will go all the way through to the packing plant, and they will look for it.
Okay.
So, and I think they go through a metal detector. No, I'm not even going to say that. I don't think they do. I can't remember.
Okay.
I have been through Cargill, so I have trailered a slaughter plant before too. So
okay, that's fascinating too. So
that was.
I'm just curious. So I'm hearing you talk about all this big, and it's fairly big agriculture. Like you were not on a small scale. Like you are small scale
We are small. Yeah, we were
in the feedlot industry. I guess my question is, what's better? Direct, where the animal was raised or came from your neighbor and on a small scale like you're doing now, or even if it was, 100 cattle or 200 cattle that you were doing like that from your neighbor, what's better? What's better for our food system? What's better for animals, I guess? Because there's a big push right now for grass-fed. There's a big push for, regenerative farming. There's a big push for all of that. So what's your thoughts on that? Because you've been big and now you have 3 animals in your backyard for your family and your close friends. So I don't know, maybe let's chat about that.
That's a good question. I think, really the market is going to dictate what we do, essentially.
Yeah.
And really when it comes to doing direct marketing, if you're paying $2,600 for a 550-pound calf, And you have to pass that along to your customer and say, okay, so we've got $2,600 for a 550-pound calf. We are going to raise that animal up to 1,500 pounds. How much money is that going to take? And what are you going to be selling that finished animal for? So by the time you have everything said and done, you're going to be selling them probably for around $3,000. Actually, I'm going to revise that and say probably around $3,600 in order to make a little bit of a profit. The last animals that I've sold or we've sold direct, there's been no profit in them because I'm like, nobody's going to buy them because they're too expensive.
And how does that compare to the grocery store?
I honestly don't know. I haven't penciled it out. It is cheaper I guess it'd be cheaper for us. Because I don't even know what a pound of hamburger costs in the grocery store.
You don't buy it.
Yeah, it's like at $8 or $9 or something like that.
I'm not even sure. I bought from farmer.
I did buy a pound of hamburger here a while ago because I had to make some lasagna for my in-laws, and I was cooking it. And I was like, "What is wrong with this meat?" Because it was just oozing with fat. Like we get extra lean meat when we do our own, so it was really quite a big shock to like what is this? There was so much fat, and it was kind of gross, actually. Back to your question, I think that if people want to be able to buy grass-fed, they should be able to buy grass-fed. If they want to buy barley-fed, they should be able to buy barley-fed. Because the Alberta beef brand was built on barley-fed beef. I'm biased. I like my barley-fed beef. But feeding the grass to them really doesn't change anything. It tastes just as good. There's just as much marbling in the meat. I guess the main argument, if there's an argument for barley-fed beef, is that it takes a little bit less time to get that animal finished. So it takes fewer.
So is that unhealthy for the animal?
If you go too long on a barley-fed diet, yes. I'm going to say yes, because the high concentrate ration can be hard on their liver. But generally speaking, like I wouldn't say that they're hurt. Like they're not feeling bad. They're just doing steer things. Like our steers out there, they stand around, they chew their cud. They've got a bed, they've got a shed. They have all the food. They've got all the food they can eat. They've got all the water they can drink. They've got shade. They've
happy cows. And even when you ran your feedlot, it was like that. I know that. I can remember I grilled you back when you had your feedlot. Like, how do you treat your animals? What do you do? And you just told me they were in a huge bedding pack. They had lots of straw. They were happy. Like, it's about good animal husbandry. And I guess it comes down to, so I want to speak to two things just for a moment here. It comes down to how you treat your animals. And there are a few feedlots that would wreck it for the many, just as any industry. There's probably truth to that. And the other portion is you just said something that really resonated with me. It should be the freedom to choose. And I know that I ran into bureaucracy on my farm. And like when you said the freedom to choose grass-fed, regenerative, the freedom to choose barley-fed, from your neighbor, the freedom to choose from the grocery store. It's about freedom of choice. And when you were talking too about it's what the consumer wants. I guess if the consumer in a big city wants something different, they better be purchasing something different, right? Like, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that? It's about the freedom, really.
It's freedom of choice, but it's also knowing what you're buying. Knowing that if you're wanting to buy barley-fed versus corn-fed, knowing the reasons why you're doing that and not being marketed to. Like, you could even go conventional versus organic, right? Like, there's a giant lobby for organic. And I don't really want to get too much into it because I don't know a lot about organic farming. But there is a very powerful lobby for a lot of things. Maybe we could step back here and pick one that's a little bit less controversial and say Angus beef. They did a tremendous job a few years ago of saying, let's market our Angus beef, to the point where 50 years ago, not even 50, 30 years ago, our feedlots were full of a lot of like tan-colored cattle. That my farm picture on the wall, there's when I was growing up, there was one black steer in the feedlot, and our cattle buyer would buy that one black steer for me because he'd be like, this is going to be Thursday.
I love it.
Yeah, but now most of the feedlots, or at least when we were in it they were mostly blacks and reds, because that Angus lobby did a really good job of convincing everybody that they should be buying Angus beef. Like, to the point where they had their own tags in the ear that said Angus beef. Oh, if like, I would think that an informed consumer is more important than a consumer that has been marketed to. And
Okay.
how are you going to learn that when you don't know a farmer? It's hard for me to even fathom not knowing where my food comes from, because I've been very fortunate to be on a multi-generational farm.
Yes.
And to grow up not knowing, just not knowing,
Yes.
I can't even imagine. So it's hard for me to even talk to people that don't know, because where do you start?
And that's the thing too. So just hearing you talk now too, like, I'm like, when you talk about Angus beef, yes, I remember there was a push for Angus beef, and really it comes down to marketing. So we are being told, grass-fed is the way to go, regenerative is the way to go, conventional's bad, or whatever it might be. And some of those practices are great. I am not bashing those practices at all. I've got lots of friends that do that, and lots of, a lot of my former customers, they wanted that type of meat, which is great because they've got the freedom to buy it. But it's also about the marketing and the education, and there could be bigger marketing and bigger education from, it could be, if you follow the money, like, I hear what you're saying about the marketing side of it, that it can be pushed into, like, knowing your farmer and just knowing what they've done. And if you've only ever been taught that a feedlot is bad, then you're going to think that a feedlot is bad. Do you kind of see where I'm going with that? Yeah. It's all about what you've been told. And I love that when you don't know your farmer, you just don't know. You're listening to what media or society or trends or whatever is teaching you. And so it's about the education and educating yourself. And for me, I'm a big proponent of know your farmer and know where your food came from. So yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts on beef? And then I'd love to jump into grain actually as well. So,
well, I know that there's lots of people out there that would think that I've probably been brainwashed and et cetera, et cetera. But a sick animal or hurting animal, I think the bottom line comes down to it, those animals aren't going to make you any money. You want to do everything in your power to make sure that that animal is healthy and happy and gets on that truck and leaves. And you do, when they come in here in November and they leave here in June or July, you are committed to those animals for that entire time. They get fed once a day. They get checked twice a day. Yeah. So, and that's an important thing to mention, is that they do, at least here anyway, they're getting pen checked twice a day. So every morning you're walking pens and you would pick out the sick ones and you treat them and you put them either in the sick pen or they go back depending on what they had. And because you don't want to miss them, because a sick animal turns into a chronic animal, and a chronic animal turns into a dead animal.
So what I'm hearing you say is you treat your animals, and I think that's humane. If you're sick and you're not helping an animal, that's animal cruelty, really. And so you're spot treating what you need. You're helping a sick animal. You're caring for them. So on your farm, if you didn't make money, would you still have a farm? If you lost money, and farming, you can lose. Hey, I lost $100,000 last year. And now I'm not farming, right? So if every farmer lost money year over year after year after year, we wouldn't have a farmer left, or we'd only have those massive, 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 big corporation farms. You're a small family farm. Like, yeah. That's kind of our option.
Those great big farms generally historically haven't made it either. Like, they'll make it 10 or 15 years and then they go under, because they're dealing with such immense amounts of money that if something does go wrong in a year, then they're hooped.
It goes bad in a big way.
It goes bad really bad.
Really bad.
I'm fully aware that, being from a multi-generational family farm, that I have a tremendous leg up in the industry, because when people are first starting out, especially in this area, if you're starting out and you're trying to buy land, and then you have to buy equipment and you have to try to make a go of it, you're not going to be able to do it. because if you
You're
do,
sunk before you start.
well, you're going to be in so much debt that you're looking at multi-generational debt instead of a multi-generational farm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that's really hard to even imagine.
Right. So this leads us right into grain crops, which is another controversial topic because you always hear no Roundup, no this, no that. And I guess my perspective just heading into this grain conversation is, I mean, on my farm, I grew without pesticide unless certified organic product was used. I was able to do that. I was able to manage that. And that's what my customers demanded. And I was able to get a price that reflected that. And so I guess my first thought just right off the hop, and then I want to hear your perspective as a grain farmer, is no farmer would ever choose to spray their crops ever if they could get the penciling out. Again, it comes back to the just spraying things. You're not going to spray just for the sake of spraying because you wanted to spray and it's nice to spray. And, you just spray because then there's a new spray. So we're going to spray it on just because we had to or want to. Sorry, that it's a big spray fest. Spraying is, yeah, exactly. Spraying is, so this is my understanding of grain farming. Spraying is extremely calculated and for very good purpose. And until people could pay $20 for a loaf of bread and that the farmer, it pencils out for the farmer, it just doesn't quite go hand in hand. That's my thought. Now, what's your thought on grain crops? Tell me where you're at.
So I'm going to come at it from a conventional farmer perspective.
Yeah.
And that means that we do use pesticides. So
yeah.
Pesticides are things. Why? Well, we're not organic for one.
Yes.
So I guess the easiest way to say why is because we have a lot of weeds and we have to get rid of the weeds. So you'll go out in the spring and you'll do some field scouting and you'll find out what kind of weeds that you have.
Yeah.
And then you will go to the blue book, which is the book that's about yay thick that will tell you all of your different options, so it's hard to even know where to start here.
Okay, so just right off the bat here, I have one quick question. So what would happen if you didn't spray your crop?
There would be a lot of weeds and you would lose a lot of production.
And what would happen if you lost production?
You would lose money and you would not be profitable.
And what would happen if you lose that much money? And we're not talking small dollars, like farmers run millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in a year. What would happen if you lost that much money year over year after you, if you just chose to not spray your crops and chose not to do any weed management?
Yeah, if you did no weed management at all, you would go broke. And that doesn't matter if you're conventional or if you're organic. They're just something that you have to deal with in agriculture. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with field crops or if you're dealing with a market garden. I lost a lot of crops in my market garden because I couldn't get ahead of the weeds. I was pulling every weed by hand. There's certain crops that really don't do well with competition. For me, sweet corn was one of them. There was a couple years I didn't have any sweet corn because I couldn't get ahead of the weeds, and it just killed the crop. And we're dealing with a 90 to 110 day growing season here in central Alberta. Yeah. So you don't have that much of an opportunity to get it right. Yeah. And even when you do spray, say you're spraying for chickweed, sometimes the climactic conditions mean that you miss the perfect window. So you've sprayed for your chickweed, but it comes in after you've sprayed. You can't spray it again. When you're doing your spraying for weeds, you're doing that once. Right. And then sometimes you'll see sprayers out in the field when the crop is tall and heading out, they're spraying fungicide. And the reason they're putting a fungicide on it is to try to prevent leaf drop. So they're trying to make sure that the leaves stay healthy so that there's enough power in the plant to fill the head. And the head is where your grain is. Right. And then sometimes there will be a pre-harvest spray, and that's where your Roundup comes in. So there are new rules around Roundup. Keep in mind, Roundup works on green things. So if you are a brown thing, it's not going to kill you. So when you're spraying Roundup as a pre-harvest, you have to have most of your crop has to be ripe. You can't spray it on a green crop because there could be residue. And they check for that, right?
Hey.
Selling, like when things are going for export, they check for residues. So especially, and not necessarily for Roundup, they're checking for things like plant growth regulators, which are not necessarily regulated properly here in Canada yet. So they haven't gone through the regulatory process. So they check for that. And if they find that, say they find it at the port of Vancouver in a boat, they go, this boat is contaminated with something. They will go, where did all this grain come from? And then they'll go to those elevators and say, you have to check your samples. And then they'll go back and they'll check those samples and they'll find out where it came from. And that will come right back to us. So there are checks and balances in the industry to make sure that the food is safe. Yeah. And when you look at the blue book will tell you when you can apply things. Yeah. And like your post-harvest or pre-harvest intervals, so that you can't spray it within a certain time frame before you're harvesting. Because that means that the plant has enough time to metabolize everything that's going through it. Right. Like if you drink alcohol, your body processes it and metabolizes it, and then it's gone. Plants are no different.
Okay. See, and these are the conversations. So again, like this is a bit like all controversial, but that's why I'm talking about it head on, is because there is, like, we're talking to a farmer. We're talking to someone that grows it. We're talking to someone that feeds her family off of the food that you grow. Do you eat your own wheat? Do you grind your own grains? You do.
I do. Yeah.
Thing with that is you're doing the best that you can, and you have to keep your family farm going. I guess if society wanted something very different, then they should start paying for something different, and not just off the backs of farmers, because the farmers are the ones that are dictated the pricing in and dictated the pricing out. And I stand with the farmers. I don't care if you're a grain farmer, a big beef farmer, a pig farmer, a chicken farmer, a vegetable farmer, large scale, small scale, any scale. I stand with the farmers, because without farmers, we don't have food. And in society, if we want something different, then we better start taking care of our farmers and looking after our farmers and changing something like in farming. Like, it's got to be the consumer that drives it and not off the backs of farmers. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's not just the farmers. Like we're the primary producer. So we're growing the wheat, we're growing the barley. Like, sure, I do grind my own wheat for flour. And the reason I do that is because my son can't handle corn. And corn is in everything. Becoming a mother and discovering that your son can't eat corn, even if I ate it, he couldn't eat it, means that you look at the food industry and the food processing with a whole different light, because corn is in everything. So it's not necessarily what's happening on the ground at the farm level. I feel to a certain extent that farmers have been scapegoated, because people like to blame the pesticides and blame the fertilizer. It's like, well, we are doing everything that we can to make sure that product is safe leaving the farm gate. But what happens to it after it leaves the farm gate is completely out of our control. So, like, I think that most of our food is safe because people don't eat it and fall over dead. If it was poisonous, people would just be
from the farm,
right? Like, yeah. So the whole food industry in general has to work together, because there's, like, even looking at salt, how much salt is added to food once it leaves the farm gate. So everybody has to work together from the farm all the way to the plate to make sure that everything is taken care of.
Right.
If you're a consumer and you want to eat healthy food, you have to be very careful who's marketing to you, because everything that's marketed to you as healthy food might not be healthy. Because I've had people say to me, well, just eat things that are non-GMO. So, well, there's non-GMO corn and it's there.
So just like I had a customer many years ago, I said someone was growing non-GMO canola, and the farmer that told me that, he said he had to spray the shit out of that non-GM canola to even make his crop work. And so I guess I had a bit of a moment just now in that society is scapegoating the farmer in how they are growing, but it's not necessarily the farmer that's the problem. It's when you go to a grocery store and you read the ingredients on quote unquote food, what's been added to that quote unquote food? What's been, changed, or chemicals that has been added. So it's not the farmer that's even necessarily the issue. It's the processing even that could be a big problem as well. And then we're marketed, big food from the center aisles of your grocery store that's not necessarily healthy. And it's not because of the farmer, it's because of what's been added. What's your thought on that? Like, it's just a big, and yet the farmer's getting blamed. You've just put into words what I've been feeling and what I've been wanting to communicate. You just put it into words for me. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah. I honestly wouldn't have come to that conclusion myself until realizing how much I was depending on the food system to feed me. And then that discovery of, well, my son can't have corn. And that it's in everything. Like I decide, well, like chopped dates, they should be safe, right?
Yeah.
Well, some chopped dates have dextrose on them, and that's not on the label. And dextrose is a corn product. So something that you think is just this turns out that it has corn on it. And I don't know what it's like for other food products. I'm focusing solely on corn because that's what we know.
Yeah.
And if you don't have problems with corn, it would be fine because you wouldn't know. But corn is not, what is it, the top 10 allergens? Those are the ones that are required to be on the label. So since it's not required to be on the label, you're taking a shot in the dark every time. And I thank God every day that we're not anaphylactic to corn, because it would be, I don't even want to think of what that nightmare would be, because it would be absolutely horrific. And anybody who's anaphylactic to corn, you have my sympathy and goodness.
Yes. Yes. I can remember I had a customer and she was allergic to corn, and so I sprayed my plants. I grew without pesticide unless certified organic product was used. I was very honest about it. And so sometimes I sprayed my produce with organic pesticides. There's a myth that just because it's organic, it's never been sprayed with anything. And she would come to me and I would tell her honestly, I did this, I didn't do this. I did this and I didn't do this because of the corn that potentially could be in the spray or whatever I use on the plants. And so she was able to eat certain products of mine and certain not products of mine because of the corn allergy. So yeah, it's huge. And then, it's just reading the ingredients in the grocery store, and maybe our grocery and our bigger food system is partly to blame for all of the allergies and all of the, things that are going on. It's not necessarily the farmer like we've been led to believe.
Yeah, and we all have to work together, right? Like we have gotten our society is in a spot now where we can't do the processing to sell all of our product direct to the customers. Like if we had to bag up or grind all of our wheat and sell it as flour, we don't have the capacity to do that. It's not feasible for us to do all of the marketing in that. And some farms do. And I love the fact that they do, but for us, it's not feasible to do that.
And there is a movement towards that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's a new flour mill going up around Red Deer that's going to be buying wheat from this local area. So, and they're planning, as far as I know, they're planning on being able to sell direct to restaurants and bakeries and stuff like that. So, going forward in the future in Central Alberta, we should be able to be like, we are buying from this mill in Red Deer, so our food miles on that flour should be fairly short.
Right, which is really, I think that's where it's at, is bringing our food. I genuinely believe that the key to global food security is bring it local again, know your farmer. But there's got to be a balance with that. There has to be a balance struck with that. Yeah. So just in closing here, we've got a few more minutes. I wanted to chat with you about being a mom and being a woman and being in agriculture. And I love it because I was a woman in agriculture. My story is a bit sad in some ways and a bit whatever in some ways. But I was a mom who had my babies, and I did payroll in the hospital. I was at a farmer's market 3 weeks after a C-section. So chat with me about being, first of all, a woman in agriculture, which is different than typically it's a man's world. That's changing. And talk to me about being a mom and being on the farm.
Can we go slightly over the hour?
We can go. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because I don't think I could do all that in 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. No, just tell me what your thoughts are.
It's been a journey. So I've wanted to be a farmer since I was following my dad around in his footsteps in the snow. So I was pre-kindergarten, and I was told by many people, not my dad, but many other people, that girls can't be farmers. And so that's why I ended up going to school and getting my horticulture degree, because I'm like, well, it's not farming, it's farming adjacent. Like try to kind of
a different type of farming, because that was my type of farming.
Right?
I grew food for people. Yeah.
It's like, it's the more, I don't want to say the more feminine version of farming, because
gender. Yeah.
Like it anyway. So it's interesting being a female farmer, I would say, prior to being a mother, because people would drive in the yard and they would ask to see the man. And I'd say,
yes.
Or they'd come up to me and they'd say, I need to talk to the decision maker. And all of these things. And I go, well, you can go talk to my dad, I guess. Or if he wasn't home, I say, well, you could talk to me and we could try to, like, what do you need? Like, what decision do you need made? And then we just kind of ended up morphing into this place where we just dealt with people where if they wouldn't deal with me, my dad would take one look at that and go, well, future-wise, you're going to be dealing with my daughter and my son. And if you won't deal with my daughter, then maybe we won't deal with you. Because it's hard being female and in a male-orientated industry. And it doesn't matter if you're farming or if you're in the trades or anything like that.
Yes,
it is getting better. Slowly.
Yes, I can add to that. So it depended on who my staff was when I went to a farmer's market. If I brought a male staff that was roughly-ish my age, they were always assumed to be my husband, which was wrong. And people would speak to that man as if he was the farmer and not me as if I was the farmer. And I found that really interesting. And I mean, I'm not a feminist. Trust me, I am not a feminist from my background, from my history and things like that, if you knew my story. But I was the one that was running my farm and I was the decision maker. I was the one. And so, sales guys, when they would call, it was me that they had to deal with, especially when I bought my ex-husband out. So I can understand where you're coming from. And I can actually really respect that your dad said, if you don't deal with Sarah, you don't deal with us as a farm.
Yeah,
I love it.
There's one little story there where there was a guy who came in the yard and it was the three of us standing around, my dad, my brother, and myself. And I asked this guy a question and it was like I didn't even exist. He just turned to my dad and answered the question to my dad. And I did that again. And he did the same thing, only he addressed the answer to my brother. He wouldn't even look at me. We did not do business with him after that. But since being a mother, like I thought I was kind of making headway here. Like if you drive into somebody's yard and the person who greets you is wearing coveralls, if the person who's greeting you is wearing a dress, it doesn't matter. You treat them as if they are involved in the farm. Because
they are.
Well, most family farms, even if the male is the one doing the field work and the farm work, quite often his partner is in the house doing all the book work. So she's going to be involved with all of the decisions anyway.
Yes.
Most farms around here anyway are partnerships. So
yes,
it's time that we start treating them like they're a partnership instead of just this male-orientated industry where the women just, I don't even know, like,
shut up and be quiet.
Yeah, because I'm going I'm going through my grandmother's history right now, and she was integral in the farm since she got married in 1952. She was running equipment, she was bringing meals out to the fields, and when you lose that ability to have somebody bring the meals out to your field, my goodness, like it's huge to have have that support crew in the yard is huge. Yeah, it doesn't get talked about enough. And it doesn't matter if they're male or female, because we are kind of different here, because my husband is the support crew in the yard. Like, when we're harvesting, he's the one, he comes out, he gets my son and brings him back into the yard when he gets home from work. so that I don't have to have my son with me on the tractor all day. And
So do you have your son on the tractor?
I do. He is in his car seat, strapped down to the buddy seat. And
Okay.
all harvest he rides with me. So he is as safe as I can possibly make it. Because my family farm, we lost my mom when I was in my early 20s. So we don't have that support crew, and we haven't had that support crew for 14, actually it'd be longer than that. So when you don't have childcare, you have to do what you have to do in order to get the job done. And you have to do it safely, right? So he's not even 2 yet, but he is learning safety around machinery. He knows not to run up to machinery. He stops.
Yeah.
He waits and he waves. He waves until he waves back, and then go, okay, they see you, and now
then you can run up to the tractor. Yeah.
Yeah, like you wait until the engine is off, or so that safety stuff starts, and it starts now.
Yeah.
Going back to being a mother in agriculture and having people drive in the yard now, I always have my son with me. So
yes,
now it is wild, the difference, because there's a guy drove in the yard here who started speaking to me, and then he saw my brother, and it was like a 90, it was such a big change in this man. He went from just kind of standoffish talking to me to, hey bud, to my brother. And I just kind of stood there and was like, what just happened? And wow, everybody now assumes that I am my brother's wife. And I'm like, no, my husband has the off-farm job. Yeah. And I'm farming. And when needed, my husband steps in to help. Yeah. So I was not prepared for that. Nobody warned me that as soon as you have a child, you're regulated to the farm wife. And wow. I don't like the term farm wife, because if you're on the farm and you're farming, you're just a farmer. Yeah. I don't refer to my husband as a farm husband. No, that might be controversial in some circles, but I just feel like everybody deserves the respect of being a decision maker, especially when they're involved in those decisions. Yeah.
Well, and I know too, like, just back to having your kid in the tractor with you, like I had my kids in the greenhouse with me. They were with me. My babies were in a playpen. They learned at a small age that we had to do what we had to do to get the farm work done. And I ended up having babysitters and, things like that, which I didn't super love, but it's what we had to do to make our farm go. And you are bringing your little one in the tractor with you to make your farm work, because again, the farm is important. Yeah.
Well, without the farm, I don't know what I'd do. Like
you'd have to go and get a job, and I know that's me. I've been fired from 2 jobs now, so getting a job after you've been a farmer is not an easy feat. So,
I think after you've been self-employed, you have a certain degree of freedom when you're self-employed to know it's hard. I can't even imagine how hard it would be to step back from making all of your own decisions to being dictated to and what you can and cannot do. And I can't even imagine.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm not going to get into it right now, but for me, because I had my stores and because I had my farm and because I had staff, the biggest realization I've come to in this summer has been so good actually for me to work for other people, but leadership, just seeing how others lead and the lack of leadership, and then knowing how I was a leader. Leadership is right across the board. Leadership is on your farm, I'm sure. It's, in every facet of life. And that's been the hardest part of getting a job for me is,
not everybody knows
bad leadership.
Not everybody knows how to manage people properly. And
no.
I don't know if it's a skill that's intrinsic or if it's a skill that has to be taught. But I do know that there's, like I said at the beginning, there's a dynamic with working with your family, and there's a dynamic working not with your family. And each one of them is going to have your own challenges.
And the valuable lessons in it.
Yeah, like if you're working with your family, it's hard to put aside all of the things for Christmas dinner and just be a family. And right, like especially when the farm is just outside the door, you have to walk through the farm to get to Christmas dinner. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to to make sure everything's put aside.
The farm for a dinner. Yeah. Yeah.
But it is kind of nice having Christmas dinner where you don't have to feed cattle on Christmas Day. That's kind of a treat. I'm not going to lie.
And since not having the feedlot.
Yeah. Christmas is actually Christmas. And that's kind of.
Yes. Well, and that's the part I guess we'll leave off on that is, you worked every Christmas for how many years? Many, many years. And you didn't get a break. It was 365 days a year. And so, yeah, that's the part that people don't understand about farming is you don't shut it off. -50, you're still out there, feeding the cows, and you're out there more, even trying to even just care for them, right? So
yeah, well,
yeah,
that's a farming issue, and I think that farmers do need to learn how to manage things so that they can take a step back and kind of learn to relax a little bit. Because your mental health will be better if you can step back.
Oh man, that sounds like a whole other show.
Oh, it totally is.
Mental health and farming, and then the farmers don't want to. Yeah, we're not even going to go there, but it is a thing. So
that'd be a whole day talking about that.
Yeah, exactly.
It is an important thing, right? And
it is. It's so important.
So.
Well, I mean, did you ever hear me when I was stuttering and slurring my words because of anxiety?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suffered with pretty bad postpartum depression and anxiety. And it was like, how am I going to do harvest with a screaming baby? Like that went through my head until I got back to the tractor seat. And then I was like, oh, it's actually easier to change a diaper on a tractor seat than it is to change a diaper in a public washroom.
There you go. I love it. Quicker. I love it. I love it. Okay, we're going to leave on that note. Thank you so much, Sarah, for chatting with me today. Thanks for recording this. And honestly, thank you for being a farmer. Thank you for growing food. Thank you for being a lead in the industry. And thanks for sharing all the, behind the scenes in agriculture that I think not everybody hears about. So just thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
I do feel like we just kind of skimmed the surface of a lot of things, but
yes.
In the future, if you want to talk more, then we can always.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm doing this podcast is it's about having conversations and not just having conversations with the grass-fed people, but also with the grain-fed people, the big chicken farmer and the little chicken farmer and the regenerative farmer and the organic farmer and it's all agriculture. And that's where we need to come it's all agriculture and we need to have all conversations about it. It's about the freedom of choice. And I love it. So thank you so much for your time.
Yep. You're very welcome.
Appreciate it.